after the game, and it was just so it was just never ever. I mean, they'd all get drunk and waddle off up the road, but never ever saw any trouble.
Say, even with the matches on in Twickenham, like, could you hear growing up, you would have heard the crowd, I guess, and
I could hear it from the garden. I could hear the game, the crowds going crazy, and the local pubs. I was old enough to start drinking up in the pubs. Then, Friday, Saturday nights they'd just be packed. But it was never. It was all. You imagine, like with the soccer, you mix them up afterwards in a pub, and certain teams. I mean, it would be
different atmospheres.
Entirely different.
Yeah. And then outside of match day around Twickenham, is it it's a quiet town, or is it?
It is, because you're on the Thames, so you sort of head up a bit and you're into Richmond, and you start heading up into sort of central London. But Twickenham there's not a lot else to Twickenham apart from the rugby stadium, and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, the stadium. So but you always used to drop it in as kids if you were traveling around in Wales or Scotland or France, whatever, you drop it in and everyone knows it. So
I know. Hey Doug, Phil, look, thanks for jumping on, and certainly I'm beginning to really like these Friday probably coffee chats, and making sure that I have my mug here, making sure we say hello to each other, and wrap up the weekend. And obviously today is the last day of the month as well, so that has implications for people on the call, whether you're a vendor or an MSP, I guess. But look, thank you, Phil. And I suppose I remember the first time I met you, we were in London. Met you for the first time. We spoke before, I know, on the phone, and we're at a certain event, and in the middle of the day, and we went to a coffee shop nearby where I thought we'd get a quiet spot, and we had a little chat. But you know what struck me, Phil? We purposely picked a little quiet spot, but every bloody person came by. Hey, Phil, how are you doing? And you knew everyone. Like, you're working in this space. I'm not going to put a time on it, but like you've been working in this area for, I don't know, quite a while. Like, how would you give a little bit of a background?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, by the way, I bribed all of those people before they came over. So
it didn't seem like that. Didn't seem like that, but yeah.
So I started in with Kaseya in 2003. So right at the very beginning of the MSP evolution, whatever you want to call it, and it was I'll be honest, I came from a sort of an enterprise sales background, and so the MSP market for me was just the most bizarre thing I'd ever worked in, because they're completely different to that enterprise space, but I've loved it and I've stayed in it, and I've loved it's evolved hugely over the last 17-18 years and continues to do so. But I adore it.
You have lots of people on the line, like, I mean, see Chris on as well, and Ben and James Mason, well. But when you look at the last few years, like, I mean, it's okay. I mean, I know you have a young family now as well, and or recent arrival at least, and working from home. And how's it been for you? Like, are you one now? You're gonna be the first in the office, or are you happy where you?
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I think it's given. On the one hand, it's great because I've got a young family. I've got a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month-old, which is great because I've had so much more time around them than I would have being in the office. So I've enjoyed it, but I do think it's kind of got to the point I can't wait to get back to the office. It's great to be around them, but I miss the interaction, especially, we're bringing on salespeople at the moment, and I'm doing it all via Zoom and calls and everything, which is great, but there's nothing beats that being in that room and listening to those calls and being able to share it. I can't wait to get back to the office, but I think it's going to be it'll be nice, because I think work from home's accepted now,
Yeah,
where perhaps there was a bit of a stigma attached to it. So
I hope this is okay now to ask you this as well. Because you have a young sales team coming on, and I get that, and meeting them in person. Like if you were that young person coming on now into the MSP world and into the channel and all of that, like what's let's say the piece of advice you want to share a little bit of wisdom with us? I mean, what would you do again, or what's the piece of advice that
yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so with this the latest recruit, we sat and talked the other day, and I remembered something that someone told me right at the beginning of my career, like even before MSPs. But the point he made was, you got two of these pointing to his ears, and you got one of these pointing to his mouth, and that's the order to use it in. And it's it's stuck with me ever since. And I think it's just, certainly for MSPs, you've got to listen. And if you just motor on and don't answer the question properly, or you don't listen, or you don't wait for a question, then these guys my experience is they get very bored very quickly. And it's the same with, don't kid a kid. Don't, if you're not technical, they ask a technical question and you don't know, just put your hand up. Say, I don't know, but I'm going to get the answer. I'm going to come back. And so we're all back to basics with these. But I think you can get sort of ratted out very quickly in the MSP space. Time is of the essence for all these guys. So that's my experience.
Yeah, love it. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them in that order. That's the
I know. I just remember some of these things you remember too. And it's valid. It's true, right? It's really true, because I've seen sales guys in the past that kind of pretend they're listening, almost sort of going through the motions, not, and it's literally going straight over, because they've got to get through their pitch, or their. So.
Yeah, exactly. I have a little. I actually, Chris or James, you can chime in here, but Phil, something happened this week. I hope this is okay to sort of tell this story. It just really resonated with me this week. We had just became aware, and let's say an end customer, they got hit with ransomware. Turns out, it was obviously initiated from an email. User clicked on the link. The backup facility was on-prem, and obviously that caused a problem as well, because that was also compromised. And just sort of walking through it with the MSP, it transpired that this particular MSP had been advocating more, better practice within the customer for quite some time. And now obviously they have this issue. On top of that, we had 4 or 5 similar stories this week coming out of the Security Operating Center. And we talk about it on these, like, the problem is getting worse. Ransomware is case in point, but in general, the problem is bigger than us all put together. So whether you're a vendor or an MSP or an end customer, it's all about like education and as a community coming together. What part of all of that, Phil, do you guys sort of play in terms of helping solve this problem?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's so one of the products we've taken on is a phishing solution tool called Cyberfish.
Yeah,
and we were chatting to one of the MSPs last week, and so he made a really interesting observation. He said that, as far as he was concerned, he didn't care particularly if he couldn't go and claw back the cost of the software from his customers, because what he found himself in a position was his customers expected him to clear up the mess from a phishing attack, and almost expected him as part of his overall solution. So he felt that this was going to be, it's more of an insurance policy for him. than anything else, because he was going to have to do the work, and he was expected to do the work. And if there was a way, of him, heading that off at the pass, then it was going to be beneficial for him as an MSP, regardless of whether he could go and sort of
exactly
cover the cost. So that was interesting. So I never looked at it that way. With when we were talking to people, it was always about, this is the solution for your customers, and here's why. But there was another layer there.
Yeah, and you know what? These guys pop up everywhere. Like they pop up in the guise of emails, and then there's some that are more obvious. And I think we even have one that's just dialed in. Unauthorized hacker. Who's that?
I cannot reveal my name unless you pay me 1 Bitcoin.
It's a very familiar.
I'll take Doge, Ethereum, any one of those. I need your cryptocurrencies if you want my identity or your files back or your Zoom session back. I'm taking over.
He's just so familiar. I'm not quite sure. He's got this glowing red beard that he does look familiar.
No. I'm just impersonating someone. I'm no one you actually know. Trust me there.
That's right.
Fantastic.
Love.
Yeah. How was your week, Chris?
Yes, it's been pretty good, thanks. Actually, it's a really beautiful day today. So, and I'm off today. So it's good to be able to get a bit of vitamin D lined up. Yeah.
And is it just because Phil's on? You've broken from your day's leave to come in and say hello?
Kind of. Obviously, I wanted to see what Phil was up to. Phil and I have this sort of constant thing where we just continually message each other saying, let's sort of catch up soon, and don't. So this is kind of a great opportunity to do that. Yeah, this is it. I can tick that off now, and that's it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but it's great to hear what Phil's up to, and I also totally agree with what you're both saying about the problems and the risk in terms of MSPs or MSSPs, and I guess it doesn't really matter from the end user's point of view. They expect. They're paying a fee for this technical expert or this company that know what they're doing to protect them. They don't really care what's happening and what tools they're using and what's at the back end. Yeah. And ultimately, they also don't really care of whose fault it is if something does go wrong. It's almost everything. It's almost everything is the MSP's fault, right? Because that's the job they're doing. Yeah. So I think as a community, I think our job is kind of as vendors to create the tools to try and keep the end users as safe as possible, whilst not hindering their day-to-day. Because if anything becomes too cumbersome, they'll just find a way of bypassing it, which defeats the object. And in education, and I think the main, almost the main role of the MSP is education, in sort of explaining to customers what they need to do, and then picking the right tools. And as Phil says, not all of them are sell through. There's quite a bunch which are tools that MSPs probably just need to get in, almost as a cost of doing business, just to get into that portfolio. So I totally agree with that.
I'm just delighted we brought yourself and Phil together for a cup of coffee.
Absolutely, I know. Yeah,
it's a great story, right? It's a great story.
Yes, Scout are connecting people in all sorts of ways. There we are. We're sort of coming to the end, and again, Phil, thanks for popping on. What's your plan over the next couple of months, Phil? What's the next step?
Yeah, so we're working really hard to. We've got a couple of products on board now that we're selling. So as a distributor, it's funny, when we announced the new company, then we got bombarded by companies wanting us to distribute them for us. And I'm like the worst poker player on the planet. I'm the one I get all excited and I want to sign them all up. Yeah. But the process is, we're going to be very selective, as we have been already. But yeah, we keep looking for that technology. That the idea is that it's going to help and benefit an MSP, ultimately their customers. But we're not just taking products on for the sake of it, just to pad out and say, we've got X number of products. So yeah, just continue that march and continue to do what we're doing, really.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you, Phil. It's always a pleasure and having a chat, and you're more than welcome to jump on next week and whenever. Actually, next week we're making a special set of time aside to celebrate. So I see Carol's on the line as well, and I want to say hello, Carol. But next week, particularly celebrating women in tech, women in cybersecurity. Want to really have a special time aside. It's International Women's Day next week as well. So that's what we're going to be doing next week, folks. But until then, really enjoy the weekend. Thanks for popping on, and please God, we'll have more of this. All right.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me,
Hey,
JP.
no problem. No problem. The authorized hacker, we have to really sort of work on our controls here. Somebody
Shocking.
perfect. All right.